plankje of zo erbij moeten hebben. Je koude airfryer, bitterballen.
Ja.
Oh, het is een heerlijke
Dat
geur.
je gewoon bundelen.
Stijn vond ik niks, hè. Gaan we niet zijn. Ik heb het ook 3 keer gezegd, maar ik heb ook gezegd dat ik het wel moet doen. Mongol, weet je wel, laat het lekker gaan.
Ja, groen is voorbij.
Onthouden, groen is de goede kant. Dus jij zit nu in het panel. Ja. Dus jij bent niet nu de moeder. Nee. Dus je moet nou ineens van de inhoud niet opletten. Tja,
Ja.
je moet altijd wat ik zeg.
Sorry, kunnen we wel wisselen?
Of je moet gewoon zeggen, Lex bij zin 4 disagree. Nou, dat gaat toch gebeuren.
Objection.
Die Frans wat ook doen. Ik ga lekker lullen, ja. Ze exporteren wel, maar dan hebben we de grenzen dicht. Ja. Kom je geen nee.
Ja, zal ik beginnen? Ja.
Dat is waar. Dat is echt een ding. De Fransen kan het.
Goedemiddag, ja, hij doet het. Goedemiddag allemaal bij de ondankbare laatste sessie van de dag. Sorry, I'm going to switch to English. Apologize for that. It's the last session of the day. Thank you all diehards for being here. Just before the drinks reception is started, or maybe it already has started. So thank you all for attending. I think we have a very interesting panel, last panel, a sustainability panel, maybe not as a surprise. And let me start by introducing the panel members to you. Maybe there are familiar faces to you and wouldn't be surprised with that, but I think it would be nice to have a short introduction. We also have some slides on the screen, but maybe I can start with you, Arno. Would you like to introduce yourself, please, just very briefly?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. I think this will be a very interesting panel because we have operators as well as contractors and right smack in the middle lawyers. So this might be a typical way of how we work. But my name is Arno Uiterweert. I'm responsible for Unica Data Centers. We're a design, build, maintain contractor based here in Amsterdam, and our main focus is the Benelux and German market.
Thank you. Erik.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Erik Lisica. I'm the CEO of Kevlinks. And at Kevlinks, we are a relatively new data center developer and operator with a strong focus on the underserved markets. And at this moment, we're developing our first facility in Brussels, which is about 40 MVA.
Thank you.
We have a slide or not yet a slide? Is that later?
I think, Lex, the slides are
the slides are gone. Okay, this is it. So this is us. And this straight away puts the problem to the table. This is why we will be talking about energy efficiency. Because if you build the digital infrastructure, if you build the digital economy, digital society, you have to think about these things. You have to use, not abuse. That's a key thing. By the way, my name is Lex Koers, Chief Data Center Technology Engineering Officer for Digital. But here today, I am mainly in the capacity as the president of the EU DCA.
Thank you, Lex. Martijn.
Yeah, another world map. Martijn van Wijngaarden, nice to meet you. Dutch name, Dutch guy based in Amsterdam, but I work for IMDC, a global operator of data centers. My role is I'm a transaction manager. That means that after the PUE is said and done, we still need to acquire that energy. My role is to do it in such a way that we can explain to our customers why they're paying what they are paying, and also to make sure that as much as possible, this energy is coming directly from renewable energy sources.
Thank you, Martijn. My name is Natasha Gerards. I'm a lawyer at Eversheds Sutherland, partner in our real estate practice, and I help data center operators and developers realize their goals and in trying to develop data centers. And we have a slide as well. I think I don't see it here on the screen, but we are a global firm, Eversheds Sutherland, and we are based in 34 countries. So we help operators and developers not only in the Netherlands or in Europe, but worldwide. Let's get started. Let's go to the title of our panel today. And you may have thought it's an interesting title. The title is Powering the Future. No, this is not the same. This is not our slide, but we can talk through that. The title of our panel is navigating, yes, a PUE, mandating a PUE of 1.2. A short introduction, because maybe not all of you are aware what PUE is. I think most of you will. But just what are we talking about here? We have the Energy Efficiency Directive, which is part of EU's Fit for 50/50 plan, aimed at reducing greenhouse gases. The year for realizing that is 2030. One of the key targets is, of course, reducing energy consumption by 11.7%. Now, a major focus here is the power usage effectiveness, PUE. And as you all know, it's a metric for data center energy efficiency. What we like to talk about, touch upon today, is the new requirements with regards to the PUE. And we put the number of 1.2 on the screen because that's a number that is already in some of the legislation. It's embedded in German legislation. And if we look, for example, at the data center strategy of the province of North Holland, staying in our own little country of the Netherlands, then we see a PUE of 1.16 for new developments. So it's getting there, and we want to touch upon that today. The first question, it's a very broad question. Arno, your thoughts about this upcoming legislation in general, the PUE of 1.2, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I've been participating in some of the breakout sessions during the day, and I heard the story, US innovates, Europe regulates, and Asia duplicates. I must say I don't agree with that, because I think the difficulty we have in Europe is that we are not the United States of Europe, so we don't have a federal type of legislation. So what we see now is that each country sort of is developing its own permitting requirements regarding new builds, but with the upcoming legislation as well as the, I heard the story, old stock, which doesn't really reflect the data center industry in my opinion, because we're still a very new industry. So in my opinion, long and short, I think it comes too late.
Excuse me, it comes too late? It
comes too late. I think the legislation, and it's good that you're working on it, Alex, but with that we create a transparent legislation that is applicable throughout Europe, so it creates a level playing field, so you don't put in very inefficient data centers in areas where energy is cheap, legislation is low, compared to, let's say, the FLAP or FLAP D, where it's getting more and more difficult to obtain new permits, next to the existing facilities that need to be adjusted to this legislation. And that's where the real challenge is, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. And Eric, how do you view that, the upcoming legislation and the stricter requirements?
I think the crux here is in the word mandating. As a new operator, will we be able to reach the PUE levels of a 1.2? Yes, of course, because we have the ability to select new infrastructure, which makes, on that aspect of the legislation, our life a bit easier than that of the competitors who have more legacy facilities. But it's also fair to say that striving for improved PUE levels is sort of an intrinsic value of the data centers. Any kW hour that a data center doesn't have to spend on overhead or cooling brings more money or makes you more competitive. So that's my point of view on the PUE. Is mandating the right thing? I don't think so. Does something need to change? Probably yes. I'm more concerned with the other topics in the EED, which we may be talking a little bit more about later as well.
Thank you, Eric. And Lex, I think you're in the front, you're a front runner on this. You were in the core and are in the core of this new legislation. So we're very happy to have you. Can you elaborate a little bit on this?
Yeah, so there is a reason why I'm involved in government relations already since 2016, 17 years, is if you do not understand what's coming your way, you create a design that is the most lowest cost, but not able to withstand, let's say, the future. And you could see around 2011, 2012, when the Netherlands started to already demand 1.2 PUE, that we basically standardized that across the whole platform. So when I'm in the EU DCA, when I look at the trends, when we engage, let's say, with the DGs, the Directors General of the European Commission, they understand what they're talking about. Sometimes we have the feeling that if you are speaking to these European, let's call them legislators for now, they write directives, it's not a legislation, but it's a directive, it's the minimum requirements that needs to be transposed into law. You can see they really know what they're talking about, and they consult. So they use the industry bodies, like the EU DCA, to basically have conversations. So it's not a surprise, the 1.2. As a matter of fact, Netherlands now is 116. Yeah. So,
yeah. Okay, thanks. We'll talk about a little bit more of that later, also from an EU DCA perspective. Martijn, can you please share your view?
So Iron Mountain is a 90-year-old company, right? And Iron Mountain Data Centers is part of that. That's a very old company, especially by US standards. And the reason why the company survives is because it evolves. It keeps improving, and that's exactly what our customers expect us to do. And that's also what we've been doing here. So we've been improving our data centers where we can. And we are confident that we can keep doing it in such a way for new data centers, but also for the existing ones. It's just that it really is a team effort. So it's a team effort together with our customers, but also with local authorities to make sure that there are so many nuances there. What's the right way of doing it, and how can you do it in such a way that it also works for your customers?
Thank you. So I think it's fair to say the first conclusion is that you all agree that the 1.2 is something that should be done, should be thrived for. And that's not often when there is new legislation. Well, being a lawyer, when there's new legislation, most of the time business companies are often opposed to new legislation. So I think it's a great conclusion that you all say, well, you started, Arno, saying it's too late.
I would argue, yes, we are against legislation. You know, we like to self-regulate. We have a large social corporate responsibility. That is also why our industry, not only Digital Realty, but all of the competitors around us as well, mainly operating on clean energy already. So we are the first that were indicated to be 2030 climate neutral. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really good. So Arno, as Unica, how are you preparing? Can you elaborate a little bit? How are you already preparing for the upcoming changes? Do you have a plan internally?
We saw this thing coming over 2 years ago, sort of, where I agree with Lex that 1.16, and I'm not a 100% technical guy, but from a technical perspective, new builds 1.16 is, sorry for the engineers in the room, but is relatively easy to achieve at the moment. So we put a lot of research and engineering into upgrading the older stock. And I was somewhere in one of the breakout sessions where they predicted that there's going to be around 60 gigawatts of data center available, whereas a high-level estimation says that 40 gigawatts can be seen as legacy, as you just mentioned, Eric, whereas it can vary from up to 3, a PUE up to 3. And if you want to bring that down to 1.2, I'd say that's quite a challenge. It might implicate a complete overhaul of your facility. So that's where we put our engineering in. And our conclusion was, with our DC services, all services in existing facilities, that is not a generic approach. It is a very site-specific approach.
Can we a little bit disagree here?
Oh, of course, Lex.
Because I argue that if you balance your system correctly to the load, every data center compressor load is 1.5 in the Netherlands. So everyone, without upgrading with free cooling, should be able to come very close to 1.5. Even when you're on 3, it means you have way too much capacity operating for a way too small load. You have delta T's which are close to 0. Your valves of your crack units will be closed, and your fan speed will be at 100%. That's PUE 3.
So I don't disagree with you.
Thank you.
But we do see facilities where they didn't do this. So this is one of the measures to get to a lower number.
So let's just, going back to your point, you would say it's already a best available technique. It's just that not everyone is applying it.
So I was saying 155 should be achievable with even old technology, because a compressor load basically means 1.5. Then you're running on full compressor and clean coils, obviously, but that's what I'm saying. 1.3, from 1.5 to 1.3, you may need to think about, can I add free cooling somewhere? Do I have space? Then you can go to 1.3.
And that's a pretty sensible approach, right? That means optimizing where you can optimize. And I'm hoping that a lot of my colleagues are actually doing that at the moment, or have been doing that for the last 10 years. But there is a point somewhere where you cannot improve the performance of your existing installation, and you need to migrate. And there's technical knowledge available, but if you want to upgrade 40 gigawatt of data center capacity, who's going to pay for that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Eric, are you talking about...
Fortunately, these old ones are not yet 40 gigawatts, you know?
But Eric, are you talking about the existing ones? Because what I understand, if you want to replace I'm a simple lawyer, so forgive me here if I don't use the right wording from a technology perspective, but if you want to change the old servers and racks and change them with the newer equipment, it's not a done deal, because often it's not the same size. You need to change much more than replace the old.
It's comparable to open heart surgery, so it's good that there are experts in the world who can actually manage that process. But nevertheless, doing the upgrade is costly. I would argue that probably data centers, and we spoke about it in the preparation, who were built after, what did we say, 2007, 2008, right, are capable of reaching the levels of, let's say, 1.5, 1.4, maybe. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the economical lifetime of those data centers is already finalized, right? So you end up with a question, and for smaller operators, this may be a one-dimensional question, but if you are a global or European operator and you have 5 or 10 or 20 facilities which date back to these days, you're going to need a lot of capital to be able to be compliant with the upcoming legislation.
The only thing that is important here is that these old data centers, they are mainly highly connected. So they have all the carriers in, they have hundreds of thousands of cross-connects. They are extremely cash cow models, you know. You don't want to, well, you want to invest basically in that. So it may hurt, but if you have space, a little space, there are techniques that you can add and even leave the existing compressors where they are, if they're still good enough.
Can I just go a little bit on that? How would that look? Let's say you are in the middle of constructing, like you are with Kevlin's, for instance, in one of your sites in Belgium. Is it possible to change during construction?
I don't think we'll be changing during construction. I think this is not something new. The mandating and the EED is new, but this industry has been working on improving PUEs for the last 20 years. So every moment in time when you finalize a design and you go out to the market, you find the equipment which gives you the best performance in PUE. Why? PUE is driving your revenue stream, your margin, etc., etc. So that's why in my intro I said, yes, I agree that the target PUE of 1.2 is a reasonable one. However, I'm not sure if mandating it is the right vehicle.
But I can answer it because we have those data centers. So everything from 2012 that we designed and built can deal with the 1.2, 1.25. Everything from before is basically systems where you need to have companies that are able to do this. You cannot use a normal construction company to come into your life situation You need to have a company like Unica who understand MOPS, SOPs, who can talk to you, can help you through. It's a partnership where you need the best of your operations involved and people who can tell you, okay, we can isolate, we can do, let's say, hot tapping, we can add pipes here, all these kind of things in live environments.
Yeah, because you are working, well, you made the comparison, and I heard it before today, open heart surgery. So you are working on the spot while the continuity should be guaranteed. So it seems like a very tough job to do that, to get that done.
Yeah, thanks for the compliment. And we are an MEP company, not a heart surgery company, but it takes the similar approach and a similar, as Lex just saying, partnership. In my opinion, you don't just tender these works, get somebody from the market. You need proper preparation, long-term preparation, and what I often see is a very close collaboration with operations instead of construction. And operations is basically the guys that I think for Iron Mountain, Digital Realty and Kevlinks, they are making sure that you have uptime. So we need to very closely prepare and collaborate with those people. And I must say we love their jobs, but it takes a proper preparation for sure, yes.
And Martijn, how do you handle that within Iron Mountain?
Well, so obviously we have legacy data centers where we are working, and we are improving what we can in existing data centers, and we do this all the time in close contact with our customers. And what's probably good to point out today is how that differs from customer to customer. We really have different groups. So we have your mom and pop shop that has one rack and that's it. We also serve hyperscalers. And one part that I'm missing today in this kind of discussions, and that's coming from me as an energy guy, is what we are doing here and what it means on the global states. So 2 out of 4 had a world map in the introduction. That's how global this industry is. And I think that's also the states where we should take a look to see what the impact is of our PUE compared to others. Now, I prepared a little experiment for this. So what I got here in my pocket is...
we didn't discuss this, Martijn?
No,
this
okay.
was not prepared, by the way.
I got 50 euros here. And I want to do a little experiment, take you for a trip and see what 50 euro can buy you in 3 European countries. And let's see what it can buy you in 3 US states, right? So I believe there is a slide with the results. If you push the green button, we can see the results and see what 50 euro buys you. Here, one more. Yeah, here we are. So this is what 50 euro will buy me in these 6 locations. Now, I'm not going to name all the different amounts, but what you will see is that consistently these amounts, that's the cost of power. So the commodity price, grid cost, and taxes and levies are higher in Europe. Our customers are global players. Your customers are global players. The only way for us to stay competitive on a global stage, because we're not going to be able to lower the price of power, the only way for us to be competitive and to stay competitive is to have this PUE as low as possible. And I think that one is a way bigger driver, way more effective than having yet another layer of regulation.
Thanks. And I think you made your point very clear. The reality on the other side is also that the regulator, the legislator, is just imposing this, will impose it. So.
Sure, and we are a law-abiding company, so it's yet another reason to do
Good
this.
to hear.
Yeah. And no, so we absolutely are on track to do the right thing. It's just that I think that we do this for our customers, and we are going to do it way before the legislation in some situation, and others you have to really team up to make sure that you do as much as possible. It's very nuanced. But again, doing this for your customer, I think, is a reason to do this way before you have this regulation. And then I really hope that we as an industry will actually reach this way before the regulation is formalized.
The only difference between regulation, not regulation, is PUE 1.3, which we see as a common approach for most of the large companies, decentralized air systems, over, let's say, centralized chilled water systems with a lot of free cooling. The difference between 1.3 and 1.2 is really a major investment if you do not want to use adiabatics or water, because that's the other thing that you want to avoid. So I think that from that perspective, I understand where they go, because if we put a gigawatt or 4 gigawatt times the difference of PUE 1.1, that's a massive number, you know. If you that put in hours, that's horrendous. So I think I understand what's going for. We are supporting it. We are not in favor, but we see why it is happening. And I think it is important to unite as data centers across the whole of Europe and have the conversation. There are countries where it might be really difficult. You know, if you go to Madrid and try to do this on air without any adiabatics to be used for the hottest day of the year for a few hours a day, it will be very tough. You know, it will be more easy in the Netherlands, more easy in Ireland, a little more difficult in Frankfurt. But by uniting, we can also, let's say, create this, I would nearly say, standard approach. You know, what can we do? What's feasible within our industry? Yes and no. Because, as I said, between 1.3 and 1.2, that's a big difference.
But I like your numbers that you put on the screen on what you get for 50 bucks, basically. But if I take a quick look, because we didn't prepare this, so I like it, but I think my opinion is that in Arizona, and I think you mentioned Virginia and Kansas, might be some of the data centers with the highest PUE.
Yeah, so that's exactly the reason why it offers her a chance to beat them. So if you make the total calculation here, we should be able to, if we really try hard and we are willing to innovate, that's our ticket to victory.
But why would you need the mandate? Why would you need legislation? I mean, this seems pretty obvious, right? And I think this is what the industry has been doing for 10 or 20 years on that PUE level.
Can I just add something to your conversation? I mean, coming from maybe an outsiding view as a lawyer, is that I was not expecting that you would all agree on the fact that yes, we should strive for 1.3, 1.2, because it's not possible, because we have existing customer contracts. It's not a level playing field. Once you start constructing a new data center, you have an advantage in comparison to an existing data center, which is not as easy to adapt as we've talked about, or this is very expensive. And how do you continue your operation? Also having damages, and you suffer loss. So I was expecting much more resistance from your side.
So there are challenges, right? And of course you have the challenge of having a current operation, and there are options there. And then also, it's a conversation that you're having with your customer on one hand, because it's in the interest of this customer to pay less. A lower PUE means that you pay less for the operation in the data center. So there's an interest there.
Yeah, and there is a commercial interest.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
But I think getting back to, because I tend to agree with Eric, we shouldn't need a mandatory system. We saw, I think in the old days, we had other energy-intensive industries, such as, I think we had in Holland a very high brick producing factory, baksteenfabrieken for the Dutch among us, where we had either you are punished by the government or you upgrade your facilities and get them more energy efficient. And I tend to have the latter. And I think that we as an industry should embrace such a structure.
Well, as I said a few times, I'm not in favor, but I understand.
Yeah.
Amsterdam would not be already 12 years on PUE 1.2 if it was not mandatory.
Yeah.
And so they're way ahead of any country in Europe. And so, as I said, I'm not in favor, but I understand. And it creates this level playing field. Now it really comes down to innovation at that field, how to invest as less possible and get the most out of it. And I think that's why I see it.
I mean, this is all synced up under the EED, right? And we're talking a lot about PUE, but under the EED, there's way more KPIs which will become mandatory over time. Most of them makes sense, I would say, right? There's nothing weird in there. It's a good thing. It's a positive thing. You see there's a natural tendency to move towards lower PUEs, even towards lower WEs. But there's a couple of weird things in that legislation as well for us as a data center operator, and that there will be an obligation to report on data traffic, for instance, of our customers, or storage capacity, or processing power. So if you look at the EED and if you look at the mandate, I think I can live with probably 80% of it, but I'm really struggling to understand that last 20%, which is predominantly customer focused.
So I asked that question. In my capacity as president, I was with the European Commission. I said, if the PUE is good, then why on earth would you even want to understand how much traffic there is? And they said, let's imagine you have a data center, PUE 1.2, and there's no data coming in or out. That's bad. That's the reason. So they're very much afraid that these data centers would run idle, and we will do idle things, you know, and one way or another, or doing. And what I explained is that there's so many different data centers. You have streaming data centers, network data centers, storage data centers, compute data centers, and they all have another profile. And then you have Colo, which has it all. So it's an ongoing conversation. They understand, but they like to start trending. How much data is happening in Europe?
Which from an overall sustainability perspective, I definitely understand. It's just that the weirder thing that is we are part or under the EED, while our customers are not. So that's, again, maybe coming more to your work field. It means that we have to adopt our contracts as well. And what will happen if existing customers and existing data centers say, well, it's not our obligation, it's yours. Just figure out how you get the data.
I think you're absolutely right, Eric. It's already a problem that we've seen in the past few years, that you need your customers to be compliant, and that's not always possible. Also from a data privacy perspective, but also from other perspectives, commercial contract perspective. I want to conclude with the last question, and that is, where do we go from here? We have 1.2 on the screen, and may I conclude that, yes, you will reach that figure at one point in time. What's next? Let's say after 2030, or maybe even sooner.
Yeah, if I may comment on that, because we operate in other businesses than the data center industry only, real estate developments. And I think what really starts wondering me is, what if we go below a PUE of 1, we go to 0.9, or we go net positive, like it can be done, true. But we see from accompanying real estate markets that the drive for more is ever ongoing. So this, in my opinion, this will happen. The other question, and maybe Lex, you can comment on it, I think what will happen if we change the way the PUE is calculated at the moment, because we see a lot of IT load also being fans in servers, whereas you can see a future where those fans are replaced by, I don't know, centralized cooling systems, whether water, whether air. What's your opinion on that?
Oh, it depends where you put the fence. So typically, when we say, there were people who are saying, if you go to liquid cooling, you have to lower your temperature to 16 for some of the chipsets. The PUE will go up. I said that's not per se true, because don't forget that you will remove all the fan load, and fan loads that go on the force 3 on back pressure. So that's one. Secondly, the pumps on the other side of the CDU that need to recircle the water through all of these servers, they count it as the IT load. Yeah, because it's on the IT side. If you even want to take that out, that's fake, you know, so it has to be there. So no one came to me yet and said, I did the math, and actually, you know, the PUE, if you calculate it this way, will be that. We do lose a lot of free cooling. That's a big issue, that's for certain. But on the other hand, you know, if you use different technology with turbo core systems, you know, able to run a good part load, I think we'll survive there.
Great. Eric, do you have any comment on where would you go from here? Do you have an insight?
Well, I mean, we are a new operator, so I think that's our lucky position, and we can implement the latest technology and try to be compliant from day one. Although, like I said, I'm struggling a little bit with the mandate and the obligation and the tendency towards over-regulations. I think we should be careful with that.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Lex, some
There's
closure remarks from the EU.
Yeah, so we have sent a letter. So after President Trump came on in his position, he mentioned we will go for AI dominance. Basically, that's what he said, not in those exact words. So I've sent a letter to Frau Verkoenen and the guy Johansson, who are reporting straight into, let's say, van der Leyen there. And basically I said, listen, AI dominance means AI is teaching AI, Gen AI. And that's not one system, it's millions of systems to millions of systems. And it's 365 a year. So if we don't change the way we're acting today, if you do not relieve us from some of the issues of reporting, if you do not relieve us from some of all the energy costs, access to energy, if you don't help us, 1 year of AI training, if we are behind, that's more than 10,000 theoretical years advantage for another one. So in 5 years, we will be close to, theoretically, if we can do DNA storage, maybe 1 million years behind. So there is no time to just moan and argue about these things. So make sure that you relieve us a little bit. We will do our good job anyhow, because as everyone is saying, there's business in this. But we have to now, geopolitical stability on AI is a key thing for the coming 5 years.
Yeah, it may have changed the rules of the game just fairly recently.
Yeah. And I think from a legislation point of view, on other energy-intensive industries, in the past, this has been done. They have relieved those industries to keep a healthy economical position. So I'd like to receive a copy of that letter. Thank you.
You will get it.
Martijn, we are already past 4. Apologies for that. Martijn.
Yeah, I don't want to keep you from your drinks, so I'll keep it short. But looking ahead, as humans, you tend to see the future as a linear path. What I know for sure is that we will have innovations, we will have breakthroughs going forward. And I think that as a result of that, PUEs that are way lower might be closer than we see today. And I think that's exciting about our future as an industry.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. For me personally, I found it very interesting and also fascinating and positive also. The story is a positive story from all the 4 of you. Thank you so much. I am just turning into the room to see if there are any questions. We have a little bit room for questions. I see a hand over there. You have a microphone? Do you?
I come down. You can win the $50 of...
So, and then you have a question for Arno, eh? Then I will give him my
Well, yeah,
microphone.
he's Mike, so we'll ask it together. So yeah, Jihan Agnar, Johnson Controls. My question is, I think you touched on that, Eric. I think collaboration with the end customers, because there are so many ghost servers sitting in idly in sometimes in those operations, that I think it is not addressed in the ED. So that's one part. The other thing is that I think this is an ecosystem, and what are you as operators and your customers are doing in order to bring data centers into maybe our communities so that it will help leverage a lower PU? For example, incorporating data centers into cities through heat pumps and reutilizing that heat so that it can count towards your PUE calculations in order to make your data centers maybe more efficient.
Not yet, eh? Not yet. You know that I developed the maturity model for heat reuse. It's 5 levels of maturity. So the easiest one is just maturity level 1, which is the 30 Celsius that we create. We hand it over. If you use your heat pump inside your data center, also for your cooling, it adds to the PUE. So something they're working on the ISO, because they're struggling. Yeah, they said, yeah, that's a fact. So they need to do something about it. But bringing it to the city, don't forget that most of us are definitely around the city centers, highly connected on the data networks to the whole world.
Yeah. I think there's a missed opportunity, for example, for data center operators to work together with other industries in order to, for example, when you're building a data center, just maybe collaborate with different stakeholders, different real estate developers, industry developers.
It's happening, and it's happening every day. It's just taking a lot of time. As an example, in my previous role, I used to be a colleague of Martijn. We spent a lot of time developing a district heat network in the area of the Waardepolder near Haarlem. I think the first time we actually spoke with the local authorities about that was about 15 years ago. And I think last year the tender went out. So there is definitely an interest on exchanging reused heat. But there's a couple of hurdles, and most of them are indeed in the permitting system and in the legislation, which we have to overcome. And I'm not pushing that away. I think it's a responsibility. So in every data center that we design and develop, there's opportunities like heat exchangers included, so that if the opportunities occurs and the district heat network is there, that we can actually tap in. Yeah.
Welcome.
I think, Lex, the higher the delta T from the heat district, you can see it as free cooling adding up to a lower PUE.
Well, besides that, don't forget that we are working with the Euro Heat and Power and trade associations across Europe to actually deal with this. As a data center group, we're all working together.
And maybe just one small comment to your point, Eric. I know from our experience that from a regulatory point of view, it's quite complicated. There are quite some challenges to get things done. Yeah, can confirm.
Taking time.
Yeah.
I'm still standing here. Maybe if there's another.
Is there another question? Yeah.
Yes. It's my friend. Hello, William.
Should we, as a data center industry, focus more on the use of water, not being domestic drinking water, but a lower quality to improve on our PUE?
So don't forget, drinking water is for us. We also need sweet water for flora and fauna. And that's the most overlooked issue. So many people say, it's not potable water, so who cares? Well, you know, it's not only us living in nature, you know, we have nature as well, flora and fauna. So I believe this is one of the most dangerous things that we can address. I believe everything that is fresh water needs to be used, not abused. So, you know, you may balance it a little bit, but be careful. It's used for something else, not only for people who can drink it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll take my seat again.
If there
He
are no
goes
other
home with $50. No?
If there are no other questions, I would like to wrap it up. Thank you to the speakers, to the panelists. I think it was a really fruitful discussion on one single topic being the PUE. Thank you for today.
Thank you all.